So yeah, moving on to the next game, we have Hyrule Warriors. This is basically a mashup by Koei Tecmo of Zelda and Dynasty Warriors, and by that I mean it's basically a Zelda game, or a Dynasty Warriors game with the Zelda skin. Um, Meaning you just like mash, the same button over and over again with like dozens and dozens of enemies on the screen with various Zelda characters. That's kind of the novelty of this game, actually, is that you can play as a ton of different characters that you wouldn't be able to play as otherwise. Like you can play as Zelda, Link, obviously, Impa, a ton of other characters, Ganondorf, even. So that's really cool. There is a story, but it's not that interesting, and it actually sort of crossed my mind that I think it's time for Zelda to get voice acting. I know that's sort of a controversial topic, but I feel like it's sort of like the series feels sort of dated right now from a storytelling perspective to just read text with these really like detailed 3D models. You really sort of need the voice acting for that complete immersion. There doesn't have to be voice acting for Link because I feel like he's the ultimate like quintessential silent protagonist, but I feel like the rest of the characters in the universe should be voiced in the next true Wii U Zelda, which looks awesome by the way. But I don't think they'll do it just because they're kind of a conservative company in that regard. But yeah, this is kind of a situational game. It doesn't like transcend the Dynasty Warriors genre that much. I'd only get it if I was like a Dynasty Warriors fan or a hardcore Zelda fan. Pretty much not anyone else actually. It's like a solid like 7 out of 10 ish sort of game. Not great, but not bad. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. And here we have Bayonetta 2, which is an incredible game. I can't say enough about how great this game is. So obviously, by the title, it might indicate to you that it's the sequel to Bayonetta, which was on the 360 and PS3. The neat thing is that they actually remade Bayonetta for the Wii U, and it has exclusive Nintendo costumes, so it's the definitive version. For now, anyway. They might release it on PC one day, who knows? But for now, it's definitive on Wii U. Won't go over the first game that much. I mean, that game's been out for about 4 years now, so yeah. But Bayonetta 2, I would say it's an improvement over the first one in nearly every way. One, the color palette's a lot more varied. The first game there were only like a few colors. It was kind of drab in retrospect. In this, it's much more colorful and varied. Like I said, the mechanics are a lot more refined. They were incredible in the first Bayonetta, which was my game of the year in 2010. They're even better in this game. It just feels great to beat people up, so to speak. In case you don't know what Bayonetta is, it's basically like like a character action series in the vein of like Devil May Cry and stuff like that. Very mechanics based. One of the sort of signature things of Bayonetta that sets it apart from other character action games is Witch Time, which is basically a dodge mechanic you can use before a character strikes you, and if you time it just right, you slow down time, and you're able to just wail on a character while time's slowed down. So it gives you a lot of free hits. It's an interesting sort of dynamic because you sort of want to get into the attack range of your opponent, which like in Devil May Cry, you want to dodge everything, all the time, and keep your distance to some degree. But in Bayonetta, you sort of want to get an attack range so you can dodge it, which puts yourself at risk. But if you can time that witch time dodge, then it's worth it, right? You get a lot of free hits. And another thing I like is that the game could be as easy or hard as you want it to be. In addition to having different difficulty modes, you can, equip different weapons and items on your body to sort of aid you or make the game tougher or, stuff like that, which is really awesome. It has Nintendo costumes. One's a Metroid or a Samus one, which is really cool because the sound effects it makes are lifted from the Super Metroid sound effects. So when you shoot your gun, it makes a Super Metroid gun shooting noises. When you run, instead of being a wolf or transforming into a wolf like Bayonetta does without a costume or a special costume. You turn into a morph ball, which is really cool. And then you have Link, um, and let's see, Fox. You have Peach, Daisy. I think Zelda. I don't remember. I haven't unlocked everything yet, but yeah, they all have their own unique sort of quirks, which adds a lot to the game when you're replaying it. And this game is meant to be replayed, so you can get better grades, you can unlock other things, and get weapons, and it really changes the way you play each time you equip a different weapon, which is really awesome. There's just a lot of diversity, to the gameplay style. And if you claim to be a hardcore gamer, you have to get this game because it respects you, it respects your time, it respects your wallet. There's no bullshit DLC. Everything that they made is in the game. There's nothing cut out. It's just a pure gaming experience. I can't say enough about how much I love this game. And I guess one side note, just because everyone has to talk about it, is Bayonetta's character. There's always some controversy surrounding her character. Is she sexist? Is she not? I staunchly fall under the camp of her not being sexist at all. In fact, maybe even the opposite. The criticism is that she's sort of like a sexy character. She like flaunts her stuff all the time, stuff like that. But my thing is that she's a really strong and powerful character, personality wise, and more importantly, she has agency in the game. She's always in control. She's not, she's not doing something for a man or whatever. And that's why. See, when people talk about sexism in games, I feel like they're speaking about it in a very American puritanism way, where they're like, "Oh, she's sewing skin, so that's sexist because women shouldn't be able to dress like that or whatever," stuff like that. But they don't look at how the character is actually used within the context of the game. So I look at Bayonetta; she's always in control. She's very witty. She's funny. She's like I said, she's in control. And I look at something like The Last of Us, which is a good game. I also reviewed that on my YouTube channel. I look at Ellie, who's like quote unquote a strong character, but she's never in control of her fate. She's always, except for like one small part of the game, she's at the mercy of whatever Joel does or what the doctors do or what other characters do. It's what they want her to do. She's basically a pawn, right? That's the whole point of the story. And then you look at Bioshock Infinite, you look at Elizabeth, who's basically your pawn, or your bookers or whatever. And people don't criticize those because that actually would require you to think about how a character's used in the story instead of just like, oh, look, she's wearing a small skirt or whatever, It's just, at some point, you're not even criticizing, sexism. You're just criticizing the, like, female anatomy by saying someone shouldn't dress this way or that they shouldn't, whatever, Sorry, I just can't stress enough about how there are nuanced arguments as to why you might think Bayonetta's sexist. I'm willing to listen to those, but when I just see like what the Polygon reviewer he just flat out said that Bayonetta is sexist, I actually find that offensive and couldn't disagree more. But unfortunately, we have to move on. All right, so next up we have Super Smash Brothers for Wii U. I could talk about this for probably 20 minutes because the creator, Masahiro Sakurai, he just packs a lot of stuff into his game. So there are a ton of modes and characters and stuff like that I could go in depth on. But I'll just talk about it sort of briefly. So the 3DS version came out a little bit before then. To be honest, that was kind of a paid demo, a proof of concept for the Wii U version. The Wii U version is the definitive version, sort of, I would say. It's just the levels are a lot bigger, meaning, things aren't as cramped. The game looks a lot better. Obviously, you're playing on the same TV screen, which is nice. You can use GameCube controllers if you have that adapter. Those have been pretty hard to find, but they'll make more, so it's only a temporary issue for now. So yeah, it's the definitive version. Let's talk about the new characters. So, they had most of the popular characters covered by Brawl. So they had to really dig deep this time. So they have Wii Fit Trainer, who I love just because of how absurd her addition is to the game. She's kind of fun to use, a little complicated. Actually, I would say a lot of the new characters are really complicated to use and don't play a lot like the previous Smash Brothers characters. They take a lot of, getting used to, except for like Lucina, who's basically just Marth. Like, I feel like her addition was sort of questionable. They could have just made her like a Marth, like alternative color or whatever, kind of like they did with Villager and Wii Fit Train and stuff like that. But yeah, Mega Man, who I love, just because I'm like a Mega Man fanboy, and when I saw the trailer that revealed Mega Man, I went crazy just because, like I said, he's my favorite character. His Final Smash is incredible, where it has all the different Mega Mans. It's basically just for fanboys like me. All right, sorry, I got a little technical difficulty there, but yeah, Mega Man. He doesn't play like other Smash Brothers characters. He doesn't have any. He doesn't have any like melee-ish attacks. He uses his different attacks from the various Mega Man games, like the Leaf Shield or the Metal Blade and stuff like that. So that makes him really unique. Very tough to use at first, but I feel like he has potential. I can't speak definitively on how good like every character is because the game is still fairly new at this point. So yeah, let's see who else. Pac-Man, he's a really fun character to use because he has really wacky moves. Like he randomly throw a fire hydrant and stuff like that. Yeah, I really like using him. I feel like I sort of mentioned Lucina earlier. The reason why I say she shouldn't have been her own character is because there are 4 Fire Emblem characters, and I feel like that's very disproportionate to how like important the series actually is. I mean, I know they're great games. I know Awakening was very popular, but I mean even before that the games were really good, especially like the Fire Emblem 7 for Game Boy Advance and the GameCube and Wii games were really good. So I know the games are really good, but they're not that popular. So I mean 4 characters from Fire Emblem seems like a lot to me. But yeah. There are a bunch of different characters, new ones. I'm not going to speak about all of them just because it would take forever. But Duck Hunt, love that edition just because I love the game Duck Hunt, and Sakurai does it every time where you're like, okay, he includes 1 or 2 wacky characters each game. Who could he possibly come up with this time? I've seen it all at this point. The last time he did Rob, I mean, how much crazier can you get than that? But he really topped himself this time by including Duck Hunt, or as I call him, Duck Hunt Dog. That was just awesome. But yeah, other than the characters, I think the most important new mode for me personally is the 8-player Smash. I think it's a ton of fun. It's very chaotic. It was made for HD TVs. It just runs flawlessly. It's just a great time if you can get 8 players or 5 to 8 players, and you can fill the rest in with CPUs for whoever you don't have, or for however many people you're missing. But yeah, that's one thing I love about Smash Brothers in general. It's not one specific thing. It's pretty much everything to everyone. So it's very scalable in that way. It can be a competitive 1 versus 1 game. It can be a competitive 2 versus 2 game. But aside from that, it could also be this insane 4-player game or 8-player game or 6-player game where you can have items on and crazy stuff happens and everyone's having a good time. Whether you're like a new player or like like me, a 15-year veteran of the series, who's played it since the very first game, and who owns the. All right, well, I happen to have this next to me for some random reason. This wasn't planned, but I even have the Japanese version, which I got because it has different sound effects. That's how nerdy I am about this series. But yeah, so yeah, I really like the game. One thing I will say that I feel like is missing is sort of like a single player story mode. So I mean, in Melee there was an adventure mode, which I thought was all right for what it was. In Brawl there was Subspace Emissary, which I didn't like at all, but I appreciated them for trying to make like this cohesive Nintendo story. I feel like they were trying to make one, but they couldn't figure out how to do one properly in time, so they just cut it out completely. I feel like it's really missing here. I really wish they made one. But other than that, I feel like the fighting mechanics themselves are pretty solid. Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, a second thing I really would have wanted was a more robust online mode. I just feel like no one's pushing Nintendo hard enough to to sort of expand their online system. I just feel like it's so basic in Smash Brothers for Wii U. I really would have liked it if I could co-op with a friend and do two versus two online, and or let's see, or a lot of the Capcom fighting games have done this, but where you could sort of have this 10-player lobby, with other friends, and two people are fighting each other, and the other eight people are spectating, and then the loser gets the bottom of the queue, and the person who's at the top of the queue fights the winner. So it's like a sort of like a old school arcade, like winner goes on, and that mode would have been awesome, but no one demands these things from Nintendo, so it's really frustrating from someone who has played a lot of Xbox and PS online games. So yeah, that's a little annoying, but those two things aside, I think it's a really good game. This is the third game I'd recommend you get if you bought a Wii U. I'd recommend pretty much all these games. No, actually, no, that's not quite true. I can't, I can't not recommend Bayonetta 2. So Smash Bros. Would probably be the fourth game. Sorry, if you got a Wii U, you need to get all four of these games. You need to get Mario Kart 8, Super Mario 3D World, Bayonetta 2, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. There's no compromise there. You have to get all four. So sorry guys. You just have to do it. Trust me. But yeah, Smash Bros. For Wii U, great game. Hopefully I'll be playing it for years to come. Alright, so next up we have NES Remix. So this is sort of a package of two games that were released digitally, NES Remix 1 and 2. They're made by the team that made this sort of obscure but really awesome DS game, Retro Game Challenge. But unlike that game, I really did not like NES Remix Pack. And I love the NES. I love old Nintendo. I still buy old Nintendo games now all the time. I think the problem with it is that it just misses so much of its potential. I mean, when you look at NES Remix, the name, you're like, oh wow, there are going to be so many great mashups. There's going to be so much wackiness, so much craziness. Like, it's going to be a celebration of the NES, and it's kind of none of that. I mean, there are some mashup games where it'll be like, oh, you're playing Donkey Kong, but now you're Link instead of Mario, so now you can use your sword and all that, which is cool, but there's not enough of that. What you'll find instead, for the most part, is that you're doing these really menial tasks. Like, let's say you pick the Super Mario Brothers. It'll be, okay, collect 15 coins. Okay, you did that. Now what you're going to try to do is kill 3 Koopas shells, or Koopa Troopas, or whatever, So it's just these really boring, like, achievements that don't really matter. It sort of boils down some of these great NES games into these like lifeless like achievements that are just really dull. And if you handed a kid a controller and just said, "Oh, look, these are the games that people played 30 years ago, 25 years ago," they just would have said, "Wow, these games suck. They're really boring." And I wouldn't blame them, because this game just does a bad job of celebrating the NES. Like, what I would have liked is for maybe if you beat like all the missions for a certain game, you could maybe buy the virtual console game of that game for half price, or maybe there's like a museum where they provide context for each of these games, and also you could sort of learn the history of these games and you can appreciate them more. I just, it could have been so much more. Instead it's just like this random list that goes on and on with these boring mission types. It's like, why am I doing this? It's just such a disappointment. I know some people love it, but I don't know. Another cool thing they could have done was make it like WarioWare, where it just queues up a lot of bizarre, like, mini games of little slices of these NES games, and asks you to do things that you wouldn't think of doing before. I don't know. There's just so much potential that just didn't end up happening. And Hey, the box art's really cool though, so that's something, right? So, but yeah, let's just move on before I get sad. All right, so finally here we have Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. So this is based on actually a slew of little mini games from Super Mario 3D World, where you control Captain Toad, who can't jump and he's kind of timid and afraid all the time of enemies. Um, it's sort of you're in this diorama where you can. It's like a camera-based puzzle game where you manipulate the camera to find what items that you're looking for and stuff like that. It's a really cool game. It's very short for what it is, for what people expect out of packaged video games these days, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a really polished, great game. Looks great, like pretty much every game I've shown here today. It gets a lot more difficult at the end. There's this bizarre, like, roguelike game that's randomized floors where you have to collect a certain amount of coins, and it's really fun. I don't know, it's just a really cool game. It's the first game starring Toad, which, as crazy as that sounds, I mean, hey, it started out with Mario, but then they made a Yoshi game, they made a Peach game, they made a Wario game, um, the Luigi game, probably some other stuff I'm not thinking about right now. But yeah, they really fleshed out that universe, and now we have Toad, or Captain Toad, rather. So yeah, that's really cool. This is also made by EAD Tokyo, so that's why I bought it day one. Just I got to support those guys. But yeah, Captain Toad, really good game. Do not let people who are like, oh, it should be a $3 iPhone game. Don't let them, dissuade you, because unlike $3 iPhone games, this is really polished. It looks great. It has a lot of like interesting design choices. Um, I don't know. It's just a really fun little game. It's like it's not a AAA game. It's like a single A game, which used to exist a lot in like the PS2 era and stuff like that, or PS1, which often turned out to be some of the best games around. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Captain Toad. Um, so yeah, that just about does it for my Wii U games. Unlike other consoles, it sort of has a finite amount of good games, since there aren't that many third-party games, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So I pretty much have all of the good ones. I know I don't have Nintendo Land, which I got with my Wii U, but I sold it immediately because I figured I'd never play it, and I never really had the urge to since then. I don't really regret it. There's some third-party games that people like let's see, Zombie U is apparently very good. I might get that. It's like $10 new these days. Rayman Legends, I might get that. I don't really like Rayman as a character, but maybe. So yeah, well, there are probably a couple of games I could get here or there. I think I have like a definitive collection of Wii U games at the moment. So hope this was a very informative video. It was really fun to talk about these games. Did it in 2 takes. Would have been one if not for those technical difficulties in that Smash Brothers section. But yeah, yeah, I bet you guys were really interested in knowing that. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, I don't really know what my next video will be, but hopefully it'll come out soon, whatever it is. But yeah, talk to you guys later.